Hello, and welcome to the Cancer Journey podcast. I'm Alicia.
And I'm Sherry Ann.
So let's start with Pesh. Sherry Ann, will you start?
Yes. Okay. So physically, 3.75, emotionally, 4. Spirit, 4.3, hope, 4.2. And my word is coming closer.
Okay. Okay, my turn. Physically, I am a 4.5. Emotionally, I am a 4.25. Spiritually, I'm a 4.25. And hope is a 4.5. And my word is clean.
Okay. So we're talking about the third part of emotional intelligence being what you get after you have emotional literacy, and then there's emotional agility. And now we're talking about emotional impact and responsibility. Once we start getting really familiar and comfortable with our emotions, there's this awareness that I think we start gathering, and that is I am an emotional being and I have emotions all the time. And while I may not be so clued into what's happening in every moment, kind of like breathing, we say that all the time, um, when I'm in the world, I have impact. And that impact could be good, neutral, or bad. I don't really like those words. I mean, it's a scale. So it could be a high impact, could be a low impact. I like that better.
Yeah, and I
Um,
like the not suggestion. I like the clarity that like this now in part 3 is where we start to see externally. Whereas like literacy and agility were so internal and you need to do that first. You can't just start like seeing what your impact is out there and then like it becomes a lot of information, right? Because you're also seeing how people are reacting and you're seeing honestly you're feeling the vibrational change or the energy change based on what you do or what you say and stuff like that. And so it's hard to start there. We have to start in here, and then we can, once we know what's going on with us, we can then more clearly see what the impact and responsibility we have externally is.
right. And I love that you're talking about the vibration because we do feel the emotional energy here first. And then all of a sudden, it impacts exactly what you're saying, how we present ourselves, how we speak, um, our gesture. I mean, everything. It's the energy vibration that's coming off of this, you know, people call it a meat sack or this whatever
Body.
you want to call it, this body, but it's external. And so, oh, I love this topic now. It's the internal manifestation of exactly how we're feeling, our emotions. And if we're not clean, I love that word that you have today, it can be really muddy and confusing.
Mhm.
Your face might say, "Oh, I'm going to be nice to everybody," but the energy coming off of you is like something's wrong.
Mhm.
Is this person stressed or are they angry? I mean, you can tell where somebody is without them saying a word when they enter a room.
Mhm.
If you're tuned in.
Yes. Yes. And I will say that like it is being clean, right? When you have your literacy, you have your agility, and you're tuned into what's going on. That way, any sort of impact or responsibility, which those ones are less often defined or less clear, or there's not someone saying like, hey, you doing X made me feel Y. There's not that clear of communication. But once you're um feeling comfortable with both your literacy and your agility, it's so much easier to then um know that whatever happens in an interaction with someone else, whatever is coming up for you, like the emotions, the vibration, the energy, that shift is valid, and it is
Right.
absolutely a like a real like feedback loop.
Yes.
Because so often we go and we like see people, or maybe we're with a big group of friends and something happens, and like, after you're doing a debrief with a couple of your closest friends, and you're like, why did that feel weird? Like something felt weird there. I thought I was being normal. I thought this and that, but like there was a weird energy. Once you have literacy and agility, you can start to trust that energy more and know that, like, okay, no one said that they were uncomfortable, but there was an energy that people were uncomfortable, or that an
Yes.
individual was uncomfortable, and that is still a message that's coming up for you because you're starting to feel that energy shift.
Right. And the responsibility of, let's say I'm walking into a room and I just heard some horrible news, but I've got to go into this meeting or this room and I just put on a happy face. But people can feel that energy, which is exactly what you said. It could feel incongruent, it could feel weird, it can feel kind of janky.
Hmm.
And so, even though we think we're putting on this mask and everything's all good on the front, that emotion is still coming through. And when we're talking about responsibility and impact, first we have to know, just really realize that we're always having impact every moment of the day, good and bad, unintentionally and intentionally. So, just realizing that we're having impact. And then the responsibility is, okay, so if I got some bad news, I need to go take care of myself so that I don't bring in that particular impact, unless I intend to and I want to, into that room. And that could be taking, 5 minutes, being 5 minutes late or whatever, and clearing that out. Go to the restroom, wash it off, whatever you need to do to process
Hmm.
enough so that you're not coming in with unintentional impact and then stinking up the room with
Right.
this, what just happened? Something's weird.
Right. So I get excited when we go into impact responsibility because to me this is like huge. I mean, it feels I want it to be two parts, but I understand why they're in tandem in the third part instead of having, four total parts for emotional intelligence. But it also, okay, so I'm gonna open a can of worms a little bit here. But like with that impact and with taking responsibility comes a lot of clarity for yourself of intention and also communication, because now it's interpersonal relationships and it's not just you, right? Like you can know what you're feeling, you don't have to tell yourself, but you know what's going on. Hopefully, you're talking to yourself in your brain and you're like taking a moment to notice what's here for you. But when you start bringing someone else into the equation, um communication becomes so important. And then when it specifically comes to impact, for me personally, like there's a clear difference between your intention and your impact. Um, and this is where a lot of things get like dicey in relationships, right? Where we usually see like fights or general disagreements or, everything big to small and kind of that scale of just like a not great interaction with someone. It's when intention and impact really don't align and there isn't communication about either of that or what the intention is or where you're at. And I think that for me, it's like a big solve to a lot of people when they're scared. They're like, well, what do I do if there's friction? It's like, communicate what your intention was and apologize for the negative impact you had, especially if it was unintentional. I mean, it's messier than that, obviously. It's not super clean that way. But it is like a recipe to really understand how to navigate stickier situations rather than leaning into toxic positivity because we don't know what to do otherwise.
Right, right. And it comes down to what you just said, that other C word, which is so important, communications. And first, we have to communicate with ourselves. So, going back to the literacy and the agility, is like, okay, something just happened because I'm having an emotion. I'm not really sure what it is. Then pause, then
Mhm.
stop. Just go find out what it is, because that's why emotions are so important. Something just happened. And if it's sad, be sad. If you're pissed off, be angry. I mean, it's like, okay. And sometimes just by naming it, it can shift.
Mm-hmm.
Or finding a very safe person where you can go, I just need to unleash this because I know that I've got to go do this thing, but it's impacting me. Can I have a conversation? Again, I say safe because communications in this scenario is vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be clean and clear, it takes some vulnerability,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't want to be pooped on when you're doing that. So,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so there's so many pieces, and I know you're saying a can of worms because here they're coming. They're all coming all over. But communications is the key. And then once that's not processed, but it's communicated and understood,
Mm-hmm.
then you could go on and not do the positive. I mean, the toxic positivity.
Right, because then you've opened up, ideally, in your conversation, you've opened up a dialogue of how we're feeling without having the like fire behind it, right? Because when it's an argument, someone wants to be heard, right? So if we can take away that fire and just talk rather neutrally about what feelings are here and what we truly need and want, then that becomes a deeper conversation. And also that saves a lot of, relationships, friendships. Like that's a big thing that we're not taught. School of life. We need that school of life and how to de-escalate, especially emotionally charged arguments and conversations, and still feel heard and really understand each other's side rather than trying to win. So when it comes to impact, like, yes, we have impact, and no one knows our intention unless we communicate it. So, regardless of if those align, we need to communicate to be able to be clear about it, and that's where responsibility comes in. Like, to me, responsibility is, well, it is our responsibility to communicate and to say the unspoken, because otherwise there's this like ickiness in the air that we all feel, and no one wants to walk away like that didn't feel good. Even if the words were okay, it didn't feel good. So there needs to be a midpoint where, or hopefully, I think that as an individual, right, you can't expect the other person to be emotionally intelligent, especially all the way to the point that they know their impact and responsibility. That's actually not the easiest thing, and people aren't often taught that. So when we're doing it for ourselves, we're completely saying these things, we're communicating in such a way that we're not having the expectation of the other person to always do the exact same. We're saying it so that we can be clear where we're from, instead of absorbing this like projection on each other that we could be sharing in this altercation.
Yes. Wow, that was so much.
That was a lot.
And I want to come back to, because I think, um, not that it's simpler, but it's, here's a clue, and that is intention. You mentioned that, and it's like, what is our intention when, especially when we've noticed a very big emotion. And when I say big emotion, that one that has a lot of energy behind it, and that could be a constricting emotion like rage, um, or it could be a expensive emotion like joy. Both are quite energetic, but in different ways. One is constricting, right? So it's more like that pushing that beach ball down, and then the joy, it's like bouncing. Either one, if the room or in the environment that you're entering into is not going to be amenable to that, then somebody bouncing into a room and everybody's going, whoa, 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 did you read the room? Or down here in the rage, and everybody is like excited about, or just in a different place, they're like, whoa, you just brought us down. I mean, just being able to not modulate, I'm not saying stuff the emotions, but to really read the room and understand our intention. Like,
Mhm.
I could be in joy. What's needed for me and what's needed for the room. Here's the responsibility part. I'm in rage. Where's the room? What's the impact that I want to have? What's my responsibility here? What's my intention? So it's the combination. This is your can of worms. And it's like, wow, that's a lot of work, Sherry Ann and Alicia. And it is a muscle like any other one.
Mhm.
And so if we just start with impact and know that we have impact and be aware of the impact that we want to have,
Mhm.
that starts everything.
Yeah. Yeah, as you're saying that too, right? Like it's a muscle. This is an exercise. It's an exercise we're not often taught, right? Like to bring it to the metaphor of literal fitness, right? Like, oh, I want like a really strong upper body. I want to be able to do a pull up. If that's your goal, then there are obviously exercises that you do along the well, you do the pull up exercise to become strong in your upper body, but um that one's so much more easily taught, right? And that's a little more obvious. The physical things are a little more obvious, but like with your emotions, it's like, okay, I keep having these conversations where I leave not feeling good. I feel like I've just lost all my friends and all the goodwill with everyone here, and I didn't mean to, and maybe something came up more aggressively than I wanted to, and I don't know how to rein myself back. This is where the emotional intelligence kind of exercises and focusing on all these different parts, literacy, agility, and taking your time. Like you're not gonna do like four push-ups, or pull-ups, whatever it is, and just have a ripped like upper back or whatever. Like it's gonna take some time. It takes a little time. It takes practice. It takes getting it wrong to get it right. It takes having bad days to have good days. It's not like so simple, but it's worth it because the result that you want will make you feel stronger in your being. It'll make you feel heard, like really truly heard and seen and gotten for what you intend and the impact you want to have. Um and so, like, when it comes to impact and responsibility, it's really understanding, even right now, if your impact isn't the way you want it to be, it's even recognizing that in this moment. It's not looking to fix that immediately, but like, let's experience what that's like. Let's take a moment and honor what's here for us, regardless of what's here for everyone else at this moment. Like, what's here for us? Why are we reacting this way? And what do we want? And how can we achieve that in the best way, and that work is your responsibility. So it all takes a little bit of work, but I promise it's worthwhile to feel
Oh my goodness.
so much better. And really, like the opposite of toxic positivity, we say that it's toxic, but we're not often given an alternative. Or the alternative is like it feels more toxic because we think it's just like fighting for our lives or like fighting to be right,
Right,
and it doesn't need
right,
to be that way.
right, right. Because it comes down to we want to all be seen, heard, and gotten.
Yeah.
The equation seen, heard, and gotten equals love.
Hmm.
I'm saying it right here. We all just want to be loved. And so there's nothing wrong with that. But it's the way that we go about that. And so we're saying that a lot of the answers are right here in emotional intelligence by knowing that you're an emotional being and then being willing to embrace that and step into it and feel it and like, okay, own my emotions. And now when you own them, that comes the impact and responsibility. It's the part where, and the muscle where we get to stand feeling pretty, proud of ourselves because we're powerful, and not in that, physical power, though that's fine, but this inner power where we're not the shrinking violet. We don't lose our self-confidence. We don't um, feel like we can do what we say we're going to do.
Hmm.
It's oh my god, this can of worms is just keeps oozing out more worms. It's the vulnerability and the integrity that's going to allow you to feel like this is me and I have permission to be me. And yeah, I might say the wrong thing at the wrong time, or my emotion might leak out and I might hurt somebody's feelings. Here's the thing. You can do something called apologize truthfully and hopefully with full heart of That was not my intent. I am so sorry.
Mhm.
This is what I really intended. I was over the moon excited about something that just happened. And I'm sorry that I stepped on, whatever was happening on here.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's that clean part. When you're clean, it's like you can breathe.
Right, and you get to be still 100% you. I mean, what you get out of all of this, the end result, not being a strong upper back, but the end result is that you get to be fully authentically you. Everything you're feeling is valid. You're not invalidating yourself. You're not invalidating anyone else. No one has to be wrong. No one has to be right. It can all be true and it can all be real. And so the more we get to communicate that with other people, the more it also gives them a platform to communicate that to you. But it's also like, in a even bigger sense than that, we're all looking for the people who get us, right? We're all looking for communities that really like love us and are aligned with us and have the same values. And the best way to do that is to be your realest self. And we find that so hard to do because we think that we'll be judged or turned away or any of that. But by being more emotionally intelligent, not only are you stronger in who you are, but that strength in who you are then attracts and repels the people who aren't meant for you, but attracts the people who are meant for you. And so it makes it really clear, right? And I think that responsibility gets really tricky in there because we often have expectations when we're apologizing, or we have expectations when we're being vulnerable and bearing our soul to someone. But with that responsibility, we also have to know that they might not answer in the way we want them to. They may show themselves to just not be our people. That doesn't mean there's someone bad. It doesn't mean they're wrong or you're wrong or anything like that. But there comes even more clarity, though I say that clarity is much harder to find because it does feel hard. It feels hard to be open and vulnerable and willing to make adjustments for someone who isn't willing to make those adjustments for you. And it's like we get to mourn that and still be happy about finding ourselves, and that vulnerability is really authenticity.
Mm-hmm. And what you're talking about is being with people who are your community. And communities are large and small. When we have somebody with a difference of opinion and from yours, and you're triggered, your responsibility is not to punch them in the face, either figuratively or
Literally.
literally. It is to say, here's what I believe. Here's how I feel. Again, the vulnerability. But it's my responsibility to stand up for me. If I don't stand up for me, who am I expecting to stand up? That person over there or that person? No, I mean, I'm in relationship with me. I know how I feel and I know what's important to me. That takes courage.
Hmm.
But to be able to say, how that phrase, let's agree to disagree, is by far so much better than punching them in the face. I know that we get triggered, but if we can articulate and communicate it, that C word, um, oh, will feel so much better. It's when we're holding it in or we're not open to other people having different different views
Hmm.
or
Yeah.
opinions.
Yeah.
It's that's okay as long as I get to be heard too. So back to being heard, seen, and gotten. That's the community you want to be in. Whether they have different opinions, they're willing to listen to you.
Hmm.
Well, then now impact and responsibility becomes easier because people are open and willing.
Right, right. And then those are your people, right? The people who are like, wow, you're communicating with me. Let me communicate with you. And like, let's get on the same page because no one sees through your lens. No one has your perspective. No one, can really know the experience you've had that leads you to where you are now. Um, so only you can. So you have the responsibility to speak up for yourself and take care of yourself and know yourself deeply.
Right. And we start with literacy. Then we
Mhm.
get into agility. So we start feeling confident. Yes, I have emotions. Yes, I know what they feel like. Okay. Now comes the big part of taking this human me with my emotions, which is what makes me so, so human, and being impactful and responsible for them.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I mean, I just want to smile, because if everybody chose this, and it's work, it is a workout, and it's not going to always be a great day of, upper body or legs. It is. I mean, I just saw an interview with Ben Affleck when he was doing Batman, and he goes, I worked out every day and I hated it every day. But then he did it to be a better Batman in that case. But I think to be a better person, we get to work on this stuff, the stuff that nobody can work on for us. And we get to have a choice. The choice is we work on it and we build the muscle of emotional impact, and our impact reaches a different level than where it is if we don't work on it.
Right.
The choice is still ours.
Right. So, what is your takeaway, Sherry Ann?
Wow, that felt like the takeaway.
It can be your takeaway.
That life is so much richer and freer and funner with emotional intelligence, and knowing my impact and being responsible for that. So my PESH is 4.5 across the board, because I love this topic. Maybe Hope's a little like 4.7, because if the world could hear this, and to actually, where the invitation is here, that they do this, then I think that there would be more freedom.
And what's your word?
Freedom. So your takeaway.
My takeaway is like, going through the whole of EQ parts, like the whole spectrum of it, like you really see the path from beginning to end and how that can really impact your life. And like, so we teach this in our coach training, how to, take your clients through it. And obviously we practice and demo the actual tools, because we don't give people tools and say, go use them. We want our coaches to actually experience them. You start to feel that shift, even as someone in training, right? Because it feels at first almost just like a professional tool to use in your business and your practice. But then you start to see the positive impact in your own life, and you start noticing just like in our interactions, right? Like that's how we communicate as people. Like we have to communicate with other people, and you start to notice those bits in all of your interactions, and then you realize that this emotional intelligence actually improves your life. It improves your relationships, improves how you feel with yourself more than anything. It allows you to, it just improves everything. Like it stops burnout, honestly, which sounds crazy, but like if you can be aware sooner that you need a break rather than wait till it's being forced like upon you, then like you can make the choice to not like let yourself sink into burnout. Like let yourself have a break. Like use a sick day, take a mental health day, like do what you need to, journal, talk to a coach, talk to a therapist, talk to a friend, go eat a really delicious meal and treat yourself. Like there's so much to be learned from like what feels like such little interactions, but we're in a big slowdown. I mean, that's a big pause is a big thing for us. So that slow down is even allowing me to recognize like where are my emotions now, what am I able to do, where can I pause and like give myself a little extra grace and love, because I need that. And who's going to give it to me but myself? So that was a long takeaway. And my pesh is physically I am a 4.5. Emotionally I'm a 4.5, spiritually a 4.25, and hope is a 4.5. And my word is it's still clean. Yeah, it's still
Good
clean.
word.
Well, thank you for joining us today and for listening to our 3-part series. If you haven't caught the other parts, highly recommend going through literacy and agility just to get a taste of what that's all about and how these all kind of fit together. And we'll be back next week.
Yes. Have a lovely rest of your day, and remember, you're more powerful than you realize.